On behalf of my colleagues, many of them have sent messages of condolences. And Your Excellency, when you called us round, all of us who were in the country were in that meeting with Michael and with Joseph and Dora. Some have had to travel because of commitments. But I'm here today with my colleague, my sister, Professor Margaret Kobia, who served as the CS for Public Service. My brother, Ukuri Atani, who served as the Lord Chancellor of the Exchequer. My brother, Peter Munya, who served as Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture. My friend, Joseph Musheru, who served as CS for ICT. And my brother, Eugene Wamalwa, who served as Minister for Defense and who also represented all of us at the burial in Game on Saturday. To be frank with you, I have a very long story to tell about Magoha because, as you know, I probably am one of the very few people who are privileged to work with Magoha very closely for about 7 years, 6.5, 7 years in government. Your Excellency, you may recall that sometime in November 2015, when you moved us around, I woke up in the Ministry of Education with all its troubles at that time. The whole story will be in my memoirs when they're published, but I remember that phone call at midnight when you asked me, "Umesikia yale nimefanya?" I said, "Yes, sir. Takueleza kesho what I want to do." I was in Mombasa sorting out Waitiki because I was acting Minister for Lands then. Anyway, long story short, when I came to Nairobi, you spelled out what you wanted done. Then we started the work of putting together a system that would help remake our education sector. Then in around January, February, you appointed Professor Magoha as the chairperson of the Kenya National Examination Council. And I remember that memorable Saturday morning, as though it happened yesterday, when you rounded us up, together with my peers then Belio Kipsang, Nancy Masharia, Secretary TSC, Professor Magoha, and myself. And you spelled out clearly what you wanted done. You said, we must bring an end to examination cheating in this country. My colleagues know what we go through during those situations. Because you said, mwache ujinga wa kugusa mutiani hapo. And you said this year, it's not going to happen. Ama mutafute nchi ingine. Then that was the clarion call or order that we needed, which led to the formation of an amazing fraternity in government during some of my happiest days in this life. We teamed up, as you directed then, with CS Musheru, then CS ICT, my brother, the late Joseph Kaiseri, the CS for Interior. And you imposed a very punishing schedule on us. I'm now saying that after I've left the government, but you imposed a very punishing schedule on us, wanting updates on a fortnight basis of what we were doing to address the mess in the education sector. And we worked slavishly, but very happily, because you outlined specific results you wanted, and all those wonderful people. And may the Lord bless the late Joseph Kaiseri, and now my brother, Professor Magoha. I have never been happier, and I've never worked with such wonderful people. From the Kenyan School of Leadership in Mount Kenya, where we went that time with Joe Musheru, Joseph Kaiseri, and Magoha to meet with the DCCs and the education directors as you instructed us. We spent time there in the cold, trying to build a system of collaboration between the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Education to manage exams to make sure we sort this out. Professor Magoha was so committed that he actually traveled to Uganda himself Because when we were looking at various systems around and we thought we could borrow a leaf from here, borrow a leaf from there, and so on, that which was close, he was so committed that he traveled himself. He said he doesn't want hearsay. He came here, he brought the report together with a critique on what we would do and change the whole thing. And we had a very enjoyable time doing a hard but pleasurable task of remaking the education sector. And through all that time, because even when more changes happened in government, and I ended up in the Ministry of Interior, you insisted that we will not dismantle the tripartite partnership between the Ministry of ICT, Interior, and the Ministry of Education. As Professor Magoha himself liked to put it, we are joined at the hip. And so we must work together all the time. We spent long hours meeting all those wonderful Kenyans, and God has blessed us with wonderful people, called district commissioners, county commissioners, regional directors of education, and all those people. Every day repeating to them that what President Kenyatta wants is ABCD, because Professor Magoha said, we serve at the pleasure of number one, and our job is to outline his vision and ensure that it's delivered. Professor Magoha was the turbo engine, and my colleagues can bear me out. Professor is the one who charged the room. Every time we were in the room, he's the one who supplied the energy. He was always vibrant and he wanted things to be done. And so, as one of our colleagues, CS Rachel Mamo, said the other day when we met, she said this, and frankly, I agree with her, that we celebrate Professor and we sincerely submit ourselves to the Lord and say, this man actually completed his work. He was full of energy. He did all of his work. There was nothing that you did with Magoha that was undone. He did all of his work. He lived his full life. He was never bored any minute. He never knew a moment for stories. And I have to say this, because again, this is another aspect of our society. In a country where these days we hardly go through a day without being reminded about regions, who comes from what region and what region is important, what region should own government, and so on and so forth. Not once. And we hired across the board, we had many discussions. Your Excellency, not once did Magoha entertain a discussion about people's backgrounds, about people's ethnicity, about people's regions. Magoha was driven by only one consideration: delivery and excellence in getting the work done. His disdain for politics was not concealed, and his impatience for mediocrity was real. He had no time for pettiness and small talk, and small things around town. He was always driven for results. He said, what does number one want? That's what we do. And this is the way we go. For all of us who worked with Professor Magoha in cabinet, and for me and my colleagues in the education sector in the last 5 or 6 years, we'll be everlastingly grateful to God for the life of this, our wonderful brother. And if there is anything we can do in this world as a tribute to Professor Magoha, in our small way, wherever life takes us, wherever life finds us, we just try to emulate that thing. Honest, sincere delivery of service to the people, period. Nothing else matters. And because of that, a lot of work was done in our country. Your Excellency, there are many things to say. There's problems that you demanded solved and how you wanted. For example, a reorganization of the CQI program by the World Bank. We would never actually have discovered the challenges with that program if Magoha had not served at the Ministry of Education. The program was going to be held hostage by certain officials of the ministry, and the government and the people of Kenya were going to lose if Magoha had not been minister in that. And when you insisted that you wanted to see for yourself the data and the facts and everything and how they were done. Magoha delivered. There wasn't a day that you gave assignments and you said things be done in a particular way that Magoha was saying or even grumbling. The other thing I never heard from Magoha for all the time that I worked with him, I never heard Magoha once whine and moan and grumble and complain about systems and people and what have you. He moved in one direction. When Professor Magoha stepped in the room, you knew a leader had arrived. When there was an argument, you predicted Professor Magoha's side even before the argument began. The side would be where the facts are, where the truth is. That is Magoha's side, no matter what. So, honestly, this erudite scholar, very solid academic of unparalleled credentials. There are many people in this world who claim academic credentials. Magoha didn't have to lecture anybody about them. He lived them and you saw them. Since he passed away, I've been called by so many people, colleagues we worked with in the education sector from across the region, because people know how useful Magoha was, for example, to the Inter-University Council of East Africa, to the university standards and the university commissioning credentials across this particular region. Some of our countries in the region could not actually approve their medical schools without Professor Magoha looking at their curriculum. That's how solid and important he was amongst us. I hope that in celebrating him, we emulate those good things he did.